Today we will be going over how to carve a stack of pumpkins. Now there's lots of options you can do with this, between having different faces. You could do different hats. I often do a top hat. You could do another pumpkin instead of a hat. Instead of 3, you could do a big pumpkin and a smaller pumpkin. You could reverse those two, or you could just take the one section and carve a single pumpkin from this. But if you want to see just a video on how to carve a single pumpkin with a hat, let me know in the comments and I can do that too. All of these follow the similar method, so it doesn't really matter which size block you're working with. Today I am going to be working with a 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch by 6 inch. And this is basswood, but these smaller ones I was working with here, this is a 1 by 1 by 4 inch. So you could probably use a 3 inch if you wanted as well, just maybe have a stack of 2 pumpkins in a hat, or a stack of 3 pumpkins with no hat. That would probably work too. But either way, it doesn't really matter what size. This is a pretty versatile project to do what you want, and you can make lots of different faces and have lots of options. So as you can see, this is about 6 inches long. It's a little shorter than 6 because of the saw. And we are going to make a couple of marks to start. So we are going to go at 1.5 inches, 3 inches, and then at 4.5, we're going to make another mark, and then a 1/4 inch down from there, we will make another. So what that is pumpkin, 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 hat, brim, hat. Okay, so now we're going to take those marks and put them all the way around our block. All right, now that we have our lines marked all the way around, it's okay if they don't line up perfectly and whatnot. That'll just add a little bit of offsets to the pumpkins and frankly adds some more character to them. So that's not a big deal. Get as close as you can and we'll go on from there. You can do this entirely with one knife. There's a couple other tools that will help that I'll show you, but you do not have to have them to do this project. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to take off the hard edges of each side. All right, so now that we got the edges rounded over, we are going to start by carving the hat and top pumpkin. Now, if you just wanted to carve one pumpkin like this, you can follow these steps and just take half the size of the block. So this guy is actually made from a 2 by 2 by 3 inch, but he's the same length as that. Now, this is a 1.5 inch block and this is a 2, but you could follow these same steps and make just one if you wanted to. So keep that in mind. What we're going to do is we're going to create a stop cut all the way around this bottom line that we had. So to do that, I usually go by what used to be the corners and just get in fairly deep. And we want this to be more of a steeper angle of a stop cut. And the reason that is, and the reason why when we measured out, we brought this line back a 1/4 inch, and a 1/4 inch seems to be good for a 1/2 inch block and a 2 inch block. For a 1 inch block, maybe a little smaller, maybe closer to like 3/16. But the reason we do that is because we want the hat to look like it's sitting down on his head. Otherwise, it kind of looks like this little strange if it's sitting too high. Like if we start at the bottom of the hat here, then the hat brims up here, and it makes it look a little strange. Like this one, actually this one right here, his hat, you see how it's just sitting a little too high on his head? Whereas opposed to this guy, hat's a little lower, it looks like it's actually sitting down where it's supposed to be. So that's why we moved that down a little bit. When I do this, like I said, we want a little steeper stop cut than we'll do around the other ones. And I usually start my stop cuts on what used to be the corners and then work my way in. As we're carving this, we will continue to make that stop cut deeper and deeper as things go on. But for now, get a good deep cut, kind of steeper to make the stop cut and connect the edges over time. So that's what we're doing now. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we're going to do the same thing up here to make the stop cut for the hat brim to start to separate the hat. So Because we've already removed wood from behind it though, we need to be a little careful because basswood can break. I've had it happen. Actually, as I've been carving one of these, I've had it happen. So just be careful here, but we want to do the same thing. Make your stop cuts. These don't have to be as steep. They can be a little more gradual if you want. Totally up to you. We're going to be removing the wood one way or the other. And when you get far enough, you can start carving away to relieve and make room for the hat. So doing stop cuts, carving away to get the hat, make some more room, and connecting these edges together. So as we're carving this away, we're trying to balance making room because we're going to end up carving this hat brim down to a circle, as well as making room to make the hat band and still have room for the hat itself. So we get somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch is probably good enough. We can always, make some adjustments later, but you can't put wood back on. So I'm gonna just round this out by keep attacking those hard edges. Makes it nice and round. And then we're going to draw another line, which is we want to be about 1/4 inch, about the same size as the hat brim. It doesn't matter a whole lot. If you're going to aim for bigger or smaller, I would aim so that you can make it smaller. A bigger hat band looks a little strange, so you can always carve it down, but that is a little bit of a pain. So, a smaller hat band is not that big of a deal. So we're going to carve a line all the way around. It's going to be our hat band. And then we're going to create another stop cut. So I usually go all the way around. I'm going to kind of do the same thing we just did. Carving down, removing material from the top once we carve down enough. Then we're going to carve away just a little bit to make our hat. Trying to smooth it out some. And I got something that looks a little like that. We can do some more cleanup later as we add some more details and take care of a few other things, but we have our rough out of our hat. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to separate the 3 pumpkins from each other. So we do that by creating V-cuts all the way around these blocks. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and then I might skip forward in the video just a little bit because this is a fairly repetitive process, but do a V-cut. I often put kind of a stop cut down first just so that I can see where my V-cut is going. You don't have to do that. Not everyone does that, but it's something I do. But in a very similar fashion, we're just going to V-cut our way around. And we're going to connect these to each other. And we're going to do that both here at this line and this line. So that is our next step. Something to remember as we're doing these V-cuts is this is starting the process of rounding out the pumpkin. So if you need to or want to start your V-cut, you know, pretty far back in what would be like the upper part of the pumpkin or the mid part of the pumpkin, that's totally okay because that's going to help round it out, which is a process we have to do anyway. So your V-cuts can help you do that if you back up where you start with them and then go into the cut, because that helps that gradual rounding over. And these cuts will also probably end up need to be deepened as we go on, which is okay. This is just a starting rough out part. So you can back up a little bit with the V-cut and go down to it, and that will help round out the pumpkin, which is something that we need to do either way. Now that we have our rough out separated and we have started the rounding of each pumpkin, we will continue to round those pumpkins by taking the middle up to the top on each one, and then the bottom half down of each one to get that rounded look. Now keep in mind, we're going to be looking at our pumpkin in the end something like this. So we're not carving head on to make these, we're actually going to be carving on the angle, which is how I carve most of my things. So to do that, much like when we were just separating them, you can start from the middle and go up. And we want to make sure we're getting the faces here of the block as well. Make sure we're getting those. And we're carving up to the top. And we'll do this on each one. So bring those rounding cuts over to the middle, just like we were doing before, and round it over. If you want something to look round, attack those edges and it will either be or appear round. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you've probably heard me say that just about every time. But that is how it works. Up near the top here, still try to be careful to not go too crazy because we still want that more that steep angle, but that's okay. If not, it's okay. It happens. We try to round this over. And then we also need to do it the other way. So we got to turn it around and do this. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, what about grain direction? Well, if the grain starts to give you trouble, there's two things you can do. Well, three things you can do. You ignore it and risk tear-outs, and most likely we'll get tear-outs. You can turn it on its side and try to go at an angle across that oftentimes will help with that. Or you can try to get it from the direction that the grain wants to work with, which is a little more tricky, but not impossible. So if it was trying to tear out on you this direction, you can try to get it by going up, but that is a little trickier and does cause the pumpkin's shape to change a little bit, which most pumpkins aren't perfectly round anyway. I mean, a lot of them aren't. So some are very symmetrical. Some of them, you know, look like perfect pumpkins, but a lot of pumpkins, they're not. And this is a whittled stack of pumpkins, so it's going to have some character and some charm by not being perfect. At least that's what I tell myself. Be careful here. Generally, I hold the top part like this and then have the base of it kind of in my palm. That seems to give me an okay grip, but you know, it's a little tricky to do. So if that doesn't feel safe to you, fine. You know, I encourage you to hold it in a way that you feel comfortable holding. In that bottom half, it's actually a little easier. We carve down, and we'll end up rounding over that corner quite drastically because this is the bottom pumpkin that, you know, There's no other one below it, so it's just going to be the bottom of a pumpkin. All right, we have our rough outs of our pumpkins. We'll have a little cleanup to do. You know, you'll probably notice, oh, hey, maybe I missed that side of the face. You know, try to get that off there. If you miss it, not the end of the world. It paints a lot better if you don't have that on there. And we'll probably have to keep deepening these top cuts as we go on. All right. Next thing we're going to do is round over the hat. So we are going to first take these corners off and try to get them to meet in the middle. So you can see by taking this corner off, going towards the middle the other direction, and when I take the corner off and go towards the middle the other direction, we can get that kind of rounded hat brim look. Might have a little square to it, but be okay. Okay. I have this little shelf here that I'm gonna try to take care of. There we go. And now we're going to, on an angle with our blade, take this corner off, that hard angle off. We're going to round that over. And we got to flip it around. We're going to do the same thing. Trying to get those to meet kind of in the middle. If they don't, that's okay. That's kind of what we're aiming for. Let's get these two cuts to meet in the middle of our hat brim. Okay. It's a good example of deepening the stop cuts around it. And kind of remember steeper if you can. And then I'm actually going to just take that edge off too. Where they met in the middle, I'm just gonna take that off. Ever so slightly, don't need to go super deep here. Just take that little corner off and shave it off. All right. Now for our hat band, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to take our knife, we're going to round the top of the hat band. There we go. We have a rounded brim and a rounded hat band now. And we can come back to that later if there's more details you want to do, fix, clean up, whatever. All right, now we need to choose where our faces are going to be. Really, if you wanted to, I guess you could do a face on each side here and then flip it over and have another face if you want to practice your faces. I don't do a whole lot of like spooky faces or scary faces or anything. I do mostly silly faces and whatnot. So that's what I'll be doing here. And usually with my faces, whatever plane I choose to be the face, I do flatten it just a little bit. It makes it a little easier. So this is going to be my row of faces. And I'm going to flatten those out just a little bit more than the other sides. Just a little bit. It won't even really be that noticeable, but it does make it a little easier to carve. There's still going to be some curvature. That way it still looks like, you know, the pumpkin face. But. So you have basically endless options of what could be a pumpkin face, right? I mean, you can Google various pumpkin faces and patterns and whatnot and do pretty much anything you want. There's a few that I enjoy doing and that I think are kind of silly, so I'm going to do some of those. One of them is like almost this C-shaped crescent moon looking eyeball. So we start by drawing two C's and then just a little circle almost in the top. And we're just going to give him just a regular smile. Okay, so that's one face. And the way we carve this is we're going to go straight in or straight and just a little bit angled to the outside. One of those two. But you want to make sure that this is a deep cut, so be careful. In. And then curve. Follow the line of the drawing. And then curve. Follow the line. Try to curve it back up. And this inside is a little tricky because it's just a tight turn. So in and then hook around. That part may not be as deep, so we'll have to address that as we clean out the eye. And then for the mouth, same thing, you know, just goes in. Be careful. You want a nice, deep, smooth cut. Okay. And now we're going to carve kind of at an angle, almost like clearing the edges so that the top, or not the top, but the middle. So we want to go here and down, and it will kind of clear out the edges. And we'll end up leaving the middle, which we can then clear a little easier. So now that we know that, you know, these top parts didn't have super deep cuts, so we just have to be cognizant of that. They're a little more likely to tear like it did there. So we just be real careful with that tear, you know, carve it out or shave it off really, and then reinforce it by going deeper now that you can see it. And here we just take out that corner. Just gonna go on a little bit of an angle, clear it out. You're trying to match, on the angle in, you're trying to match how deep you went with the outline cut, if that makes sense. Which is why you wanted it deep. It can always be deepened, but it does help if it's deep to begin with. So, kind of like that. We could probably go a little deeper around the edges if we want to, but we can do that in the cleanup phase. And we got one done, and now we'll do the other one. So it's the same thing. You know, trying to match that depth that you had. Cleaning them out. And I knew I was not very deep at the top, so, you know, that tried to tear out a little bit, and that's okay. We just are real careful up there and then make it deeper when we can see it, is how I handle that. So now that I can see it, I can get my knife in there a little easier. And take care of it. There's two. Just a plain regular smile is pretty easy. You just clear it out. Same thing. Deep around the edges. And then on an angle, try to match where you were. Clear it out. We'll get the pencil marks off at the end when we're cleaning everything up. But, I mean, you can take care of them now, I guess, if you can take care of the pencil marks now if you really want to, but we'll come back around and do some cleanup stuff, and that'll be part of it. So that's one face. I don't think it'd be quite right if we did this and didn't have like a standard pumpkin face. So I'm gonna do some big triangles. Triangles are not really my favorite eyes for the pumpkin. I don't know, I've been experimenting with other silly faces, and the triangle ones aren't really my favorite, but that's okay. And then for, you know, a pretty standard pumpkin face, we're gonna make a really big mouth. And I'm gonna put one tooth here, and one tooth here. I mean, you could do as many as you want, fit as many as you want in there. And we gotta do the same thing. You know, it's outline the shapes that you want, outline the eyes. And same process, just take care of those edges. This is almost like a chip cut. And we can actually take off the middle once we do that. Triangles aren't so bad to carve. I've been making other silly faces that I like better. You can do whatever faces you want. You don't have to do the same ones I'm doing. This process works for most things you're going for. Most shapes. So same thing here. We carve out the mouth, except we just got to be cognizant of where those teeth are. So we got to kind of put some stop cuts around the teeth. And then just make sure we connect our the outsides of the mouth, you know, those cuts to them. I don't know if you guys heard that, but my air conditioner just kicked on. So sorry if that's coming through the mic now. So same thing here, just be cognizant of how deep you went, because if you didn't get it too deep, you might have some tear outs. And we just got to carve around those teeth. So getting some good stop cuts will help us do that. Carve them out. You want good depth here. Depth is our friend in carving. But I will say when it comes to... Oh, took off a little bit of it. That's not good. I will say when it comes to pumpkin mouths like this, paint is very helpful because you just paint black around it and it shows up pretty well as long as you have a little bit of depth. So you don't have to go too crazy, but you want some separation, you want to be able to distinguish it, and the paint will help a lot to do the rest. There we go. Something like that. And our last one, we're gonna do one that I've done quite a bit, and I think they're pretty fun, is we're gonna make a little winky face, and he's probably gonna have his tongue sticking out, which I think is pretty fun, and I think it's silly. So first thing I do is I'm gonna draw an eye, and I wanna draw one of my church window eyes or my arching eyes. I do this a lot for a lot of carvings. I give them these, kind of this big arch eye. You can do a circle eye too if you want. Circles are just a little more difficult for me. Then I make that eye first, and then the winking is actually just kind of just like an arrow, kind of like a curved arrow down. And with the points of the arrow, I guess, the two lines that make the point, just kind of curving away. Something like that. And then his face, he's gonna have a smile. These guys are happy. And we're gonna give him a little tongue sticking out down here, because I think that's silly. And we're whittling, so why not be silly? Okay. Winking face, pretty easy. It's just some V-cuts. So I'm gonna do the long one first, straight in, and then on an angle. Try to get a little deep. We don't want to go too wide with it, but we do want deep, and we want to make sure we're getting that, that look of kind of a wrinkle there. And then we're going to do the second one. It's a little shorter. Same thing. Kind of get that guide cut, and then both sides of the V. And then we're going to do the one that kind of goes up top. So same thing, guide cut, both sides of the V. So something like that. Okay. And I want to extend that one just ever so slightly. Something like that. When you paint and wood burn, that comes out looking like that guy. The church window eye or the arch eye, I usually make my base cut first on my bottom. I want to be deep. And then it's just that curve that we kind of had earlier, where you want to go in, keep it deep, go up to the top. Sometimes you can only get halfway, so flip it over, do the same thing. I connect it to the bottom and then side down and finish the curve. These, you got a 3-corner cut ready for your right in the corner. You can get that out usually pretty easily. I missed something there. There we go. So that chip out's done. That chip out's done. And then if you just follow that up, you can clear the top part. Same deal though. I mean, you want to be deep. If it wasn't deep enough, you might risk tear outs and whatnot, which we've already talked about. So we're dealing with that pretty much every time when we're carving out eyes. That sounds gruesome, but that's what we're doing. We're carving out eyes in a good way. We're giving them eyes. We're carving in eyes, I guess. I don't know. All right. Now for his mouth, we're going to give a line across here and a line around here. So try to curve that best you can. If you need to make a block first and then carve out to get the rounded edges, totally okay. I did put this guy at the bottom, so getting this second curve is a little tricky for me, so I'm going to do it in steps where I feel safe because there's nothing to grab there. So I went down here to complete that cut and then finish the round cut by going away from me. Okay. What I was tempted to do is hold it like this and do like this, but I feel like I have very little control that way. And that's asking for a knife to go in a very vulnerable spot. So be safe. Be safe. Now what we're going to do is we're going to carve up to the mouth stop cut. So here, this isn't so bad. Just, just very little cut straight up That's not a big deal. A little more separation here. Up to the mouth stop cut and carve over. Make sure that's deep enough. And here we might have to do a pairing cut, which I really don't like doing, but you know, gotta clear that out. So we're trying to clear out what's around the tongue. And I guess, I mean, you could put the tongue on either side, whatever. This doesn't come out as cleanly as I want it, but that's okay. We'll do our best to clean it up, and paint will actually cover a lot of that. The other thing I do is we do just a little bit back on the tongue, just a little bit back into the mouth, give it some texture, and then round over the corners, that hard edge of the tongue. Which you might have to be real sneaky with how you do that. Could have made it bigger, I guess. That's okay. Round it that way, and I do usually give like a little line on it. Which you can do with just a V-cut, something like that. All right, we're in the home stretch, we're almost done. This is where having another tool is very helpful, but you don't have to have that tool. So we're going to add these texture lines that you see. And you can do that with a knife. The way you do that with a knife is you do a bunch of V-cuts. So you go in, and you either follow that up with the edge, or you can go in with the side, kind of depending on how much control you have and how comfortable you are and how sharp your knife is and all that fun stuff. That allows your texture. Or if you have one, get a V-tool. This is a I want to say a 70 degree 6mm V-tool that does the job pretty well in my opinion. So what we want to do is we're going to divide the pumpkin into fourths and then each section in half, so eighths. So we're going to do one here on the front, one on each side. We're going to go up and down. So if you don't have a V-tool and you're using a knife, that's okay. You can pause the video and do your V-cuts. This, I'm just gonna show you how quick this becomes with a V-tool. So there's our one in the middle. Got one all the way around the edge in eighths, essentially. And then we're gonna do it on the bottom too. So I usually do the fourths first, and then the eighths. And to give some texture, I usually do connect some of them all the way, not all of them, but some of them I usually do connect the top and the bottom texture cuts. So like this, I'll connect this one right here, and I'll connect this one over here a little bit, get this one a little closer. And we're gonna do that on all of them. So I'm probably fast forward the video a little bit. And if you have your knife, that's okay. Like, you know, you can still put it where you want it and carve up and carve up. Actually, sometimes the ones done with the knife actually look better than the V-tool, sometimes. So it's kind of up to you, but this is all texture. It helps a lot. So that's what we're doing now. That's the next step. Okay, once you got all your texture lines in, we need to clean up a little bit, especially if you have the V-tool. It probably left these little chunks at the top, and we just need to clean those up. But also what we need to do is we need to widen that V-cut at the base. Now, maybe you already did this if you have the knife. Like if you used your knife, you might have done this already. But what we're doing is we are widening where that V-cut comes in contact with either the hat or the next pumpkin. What that does is give us that texture of kind of that bumpy look on the top and bottom of a pumpkin. Like you'll see it kind of in there. So we just widen it out at the very top. We're going kind of to the edge. and get a stop cut. And you can see where that widens and it creates that bumpy texture. So we need to do that all the way around. Now, if you are carving a 1x1 block, you might not need to do this. I've done it on a 1x1, and I've also skipped this part on the 1x1. I mean, you could skip this part if you want to, regardless. But the 1x1 is small enough that sometimes the V-cut does it good enough that you don't actually need to do this. But on the bigger blocks, I've noticed that, you know, it does help. So we will do it both on the top and the bottom. We're just kind of widening out where that V-cut ended by going wide and then stop cut. Wide, get it out. Wide, get it out. And this is one of the more tedious parts of the process here. All right, and I still do it at the bottom because that helps give texture to the bottom of the carving as well. So this kind of V-cut, clear it, V-cut, clear it, V-cut, clear it. All right, now we just gotta clean up some of our hard edges here and clean up our pencil lines, and we are home free. So we're gonna just ever so slightly shave off these pencil lines. And round some of these hard edges, maybe like on the mouth here, we'll just round that over just a little bit. Brush them away. And some pencil lines for the triangle eyes, so we'll shave those off. This is another reason why you want those eye cuts to be deep. Shave off the lines for the mouth here. Take another just little hard edge off. Leave it down here on the bottom of this mouth as well. You can even this one, usually you can kind of clear all the way up. Gotta be careful around the pencil marks of the teeth or anything, because those you can accidentally take those off, then you gotta redo them. And then we will also take off this hard edge at the bottom of the arching eye. Clear this. Get those pencil marks off. That looks like a flat plane from the edge, so we're going to try to take that off. And we will ever so slightly take the hard edge of that off. And a little brush out. There you go. You can keep going over any hard edges if you want. You can still, some of these texture cuts, you can actually go over those hard edges, and it gives even more texture still if you want. If this hat on top is just a little too big, you think, shave that down a little bit. And then just, be sure to come back down to meet the hat band. Maybe round that over again if you need to. But yeah, that's all cleanup up to your discretion, how much you like. That is how you carve a stack of pumpkins with a top hat. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in another one.